Collin Johns, a shining example of excellence in pickleball, has already achieved an impressive 54 professional top 3 finishes. Currently, he holds the #1 spot in men's doubles, where he and his brother Ben Johns are nearly unbeatable, and ranks number 20 in mixed doubles. However, when rumors of an alleged email surfaced detailing his grievances with Major League Pickleball, where he plays for the Carolina Pickleball Club in the Premier Division, the entire professional circuit was thrown into chaos. Initially, many believed the complaints to be fake. After all, Collin is one of the sport's biggest names. But when Collin released an official statement confirming the email's authenticity, the shockwaves hit a new high.
The list of grievances allegedly written by me and currently being shared is based on a number of texts that were privately shared in casual conversation. I never made any official communication or sent any emails to MLP. My opinions were reframed and forwarded to MLP without my consent, then subsequently leaked to the general public, which was never my intention. I fully admit that, like all people, I occasionally communicate my thoughts and ideas to friends and family, but the fact that my words were taken out of context, misrepresented, and released publicly is unfair and extremely frustrating. It is my duty to address concerns with MLP directly and privately as a catalyst to drive positive change within the sport that I want to see succeed. I appreciate the opportunity to compete in pickleball in any capacity, and any perceived diminishment to the sport of pickleball caused by this series of events is something that is regrettable. The list of complaints shared across the internet is not indicative of how I would choose to express myself.
With Collin Johns' heartfelt statement now out in the open, the pickleball community found itself at a crossroads. The unexpected leak had not only stirred up controversy, but also brought to light underlying issues within Major League Pickleball. Let's take a look at the 8 key grievances raised in Collin's email. Collin's first point.
A top player like Ben is handicapped for being the best by having bottom-tier players on his team. That's the equivalent of taxing the very wealthy who worked hard to be wealthy, to the point of having to work harder than the average person to come out ahead. It's unfair to penalize him like that.
In the past, Ben Johns, Collin's brother, and one of the top male players in the sport, had the safety net of a snake-style draft, still managing to snag picks in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds. But this time, in 2024, there was an auction draft, and Ben picked his team. You'd think he'd pick the best of the best to dominate the game, right? Wrong. It seems like he chose his buddies over winning. Would we even be having this conversation if the Carolina team was crushing it? Let's discuss the money. Carolina Pickleball team had a $1 million budget to burn, but they only spent $863,000. They picked Andrea Koop, ranked 43rd, Jesse Irvine, ranked 44th, and Collin Johns, ranked 47th. Just imagine, if they had spent a mere $130,000 more, they could have snagged a dream team like Ben Johns, Lacey Schneemann, Tyler Leung, and Vivian Glasman. This squad would have been unstoppable. So, what's the deal with Ben's choice in team? Was it about strategy, friendships, or just a missed opportunity? On to Collin's second point.
The scoring system is designed to allow inferior players to keep the scoreline close and steal matches they don't deserve to win. The advantage of returning outweighs how much better a team or player is. This keeps the scoreline close no matter what, and the freeze allows the inferior team during the match to catch up arbitrarily. The scoring system is extremely dumb. Just because a system is widely used doesn't make it a good one. A proper scoring system should give the better team a legitimate chance to demonstrate why they are better. If the underdog performs better under those conditions that day, they deserve to win. But not just because they stayed close and caught up at the end because of the freeze.
The freeze rule. What is it? The freeze rule in pickleball is a rally scoring rule that prevents a team from scoring points except when serving. Winning team freeze. When a team reaches 20 points, they can only score points on their serve for the rest of the game. Losing team freeze. If the losing team reaches 18 points, they also freeze and can only score points on their serve. Both teams freeze. If the score is tied at 19-19 and becomes 20-19, both teams freeze. In rally scoring, teams can win points by either side regardless of who served. However, the freeze rule prevents teams from winning a game by winning a rally when they are the return team. I actually agree here with Collin's point. The freeze rule does give the trailing team a better shot at a comeback. The underdog team gets a better chance to win due to the freeze, which might feel a bit unfair. The games get way more dramatic because of the freeze, and who doesn't love a bit of extra tension? The winning team feels the pressure crank up a notch, and that's pure gold for the spectators. So here's my suggestion. Once a team hits 24, let's apply the freeze to both teams. Boom, problem solved. On to Collin's third point.
It is portrayed as a team effort, even though the results clearly hinge on certain matches, where you personally have no control over the outcome. In theory, Ben and I could have won every single one of our matches, but with our women going 0-9 to start the season, we have no ability to do more than offset that. As good as Ben is, he can't play more than 2 matches and 4 points at a time in a DB. He's at the mercy of the rest of his team that are the bottom tier of available players. It's a team, yes, but with certain players carrying the bulk of the load to lift up players who aren't actually pulling their weight.
Sure, in theory, Ben and Collin could go 9-0, but they might still struggle if the women on their team don't perform. Here's the deal. Ben and Collin have a 64% winning percentage in men's doubles, going 7-4 in the regular season, not even counting their 2 losses at the Beer City Open. Guys like J.W. Johnson, Augie G, Gabe Tardio, and Hayden Patriquin all have better doubles results than the Johns brothers. So while Ben and Collin could go 9-0, they've only managed 7-4 so far, or 7-6 if you include BCO. Now, let's take a look at the lesser tier players Ben has to play with, including Collin. Collin is one of the weakest men in the Premier level because of his lack of mixed doubles skills. Yeah, the women on the Carolina team haven't been stellar, but Collin's lack of firepower definitely puts him in the lesser tier too. On to Collin's 4th point.
Singles might be exciting, but it is not the focus of many top players. It is suddenly deemed important for some reason and made to be a big part of the event. I say that as someone who is very capable in singles. I am personally fine playing 4 singles points at a time, but I don't believe it should be as important as it is.
I totally agree on this point. While Dream Breakers are an absolute thrill, they're just worth too many points. Let me lay it out for you. With the current scoring system, a Dream Breaker, a singles tiebreaker that's used when 2 teams are tied 2-2 after 4 games, is currently worth as much as 2 doubles match wins. How is that possible? Well, if 2 teams make it to a Dream Breaker, they've each already snagged 1 point. The Dream Breaker itself then adds another point to the winner's tally. So essentially, 2 doubles wins equal 1 Dream Breaker win in terms of season points. And honestly, that's just too high. To balance things out, I suggest a Dream Breaker win should only be worth 1/2 point. That way, we keep the drama and excitement without letting it overshadow the doubles matches. Issue resolved. And now on to Collin's 5th point.
Players, owners, GMs, and fans are permitted to behave in the worst ways at MLP. It's part of the culture. You can scream, stare down, finger wag, taunt, cheat, and use pretty much any Bush League tactics you want with very little risk of repercussions. It's an accepted part of MLP. As someone who values a level of sportsmanship, I hate this part of it. It brings out the worst in people. And players who are normally quarterfinal level suddenly act like tough guy jackasses just because they have a better supporting cast than another top player. AL's on-court behavior was shameful against us. So it isn't just lower-tier players. It is a long list of guilty parties. This makes MLP unenjoyable to me and others who have similar views.
Major League Pickleball is meant to be rowdy, but Collin Johns isn't a fan. Things have escalated lately, and MLP needs to rein in some trash talking, especially from the sidelines and team personnel. Who knows what really went down between Collin and Anna Lee? Any juicy details have probably been scrubbed from the MLP upload. But when Collin says this makes MLP unenjoyable to me and those with similar views, it makes you wonder just how many other players feel the same way. It's not a huge number, but definitely not 0. On to Collin's 6th point.
The venue selection is grossly unprofessional. This week was in a remote area of SLC at a facility without adequate spacing around the courts and horrendous lighting. The lighting is just so wrong. The Picklr literally put undifused lighting directly down the middle of the courts, meaning direct LED lighting down the sight lines of the courts. This is absurd and grossly unprofessional to have players play a pro event in those conditions. Ben already has an issue with indoor lighting, and this week was completely unworkable. You can't compete if you can't see the ball properly. Also, the last cumulative season event in DC was downright dangerous with where it was at, with no lights to finish matches within time constraints. The venue selection process is completely unprofessional by MLP.
Some people have chatted with a few pros about the lighting at MLP Salt Lake City, and guess what? Not one of them had complaints. So maybe it's just a Ben and Collin really hate indoor pickleball thing. Now let's inspect the DC venue pick. This was a major misstep by MLP. Players felt unsafe. They had no idea the venue lacked proper lighting, and matches had to be moved or left unfinished because of it. Total fail on MLP's part. To Collin's 7th point, we go.
MLP just signed a ball contract with Vulcan. I'm aware they were under pressure to follow PPA on that. However, when it comes to standards for the players, this is a downright wrong. The quality of the ball affects the quality of play significantly, which is unfair to the players and the fans. We don't practice hard to perfect shots that no longer matter because the ball doesn't bounce. And I don't want to hear it is the same for everyone. It isn't. The worst players benefit more because it is less about skill and more about luck. Pickleball also loses when our top players routinely whiff the ball. I'm sure that looks really good on ESPN when we can barely make contact. It's infuriating and unprofessional.
This one's a tough pill to swallow. We all know the Vulcan ball causes some pretty awful bounces, goes out of round, and overall just isn't a great ball. Most folks agree on this. Sure, perhaps a low-quality ball does help less skilled teams, but here's where things get interesting. Collin's hefty salary is partly backed by this massive Vulcan ball deal with the PPA and MLP. Vulcan shelled out big bucks to be the official ball, and honestly, dealing with a subpar ball for another 6 months is a small price to pay for that extra cash in the UPA's coffers. Blasting the MLP for the Vulcan ball issue while the PPA uses the same ball is just illogical. If this was a tirade against MLP, the whole point falls apart. On to Collin's 8th and final point.
Paddle testing in DC was an unmitigated disaster. Not only do we have standards that are completely out of control, we can't even rely on the testing equipment used to be consistent. This general issue is as much a problem at PPAs, so it isn't regulated to just MLP.
I don't think any sane person who knows what's going on with paddle testing would disagree with Collin here. The only folks who might think the UPA's paddle testing is up to par are the PPL, the organization's third-party tester, but even they probably know it's not where it needs to be. But, as Collin admits, the PPA and MLP both use the same paddle testing requirements, so if this email was solely about MLP, the argument just isn't great. However, I'm siding with Collin in this instance, because the current state of paddle testing just isn't cutting it. Finally, Collin closed out his thoughts with,
I am aware that there are many staff members who work hard to make MLP happen, and fans who like going to the events. However, if MLP is asking for professional effort on the part of the players, they need to be held to the same standard. And the above factors are legitimate grievances, particularly the ones that are unprofessional standards like the venue and the ball. If they want to pay us to stay home, so be it. But we work to receive a contract that includes being paid for team events. We will fulfill our contract duties and sign paddles and go chase the Vulcan ball around on court if necessary. But don't expect us to enjoy doing it.
Collin Johns' grievances shed light on the state of Major League Pickleball. The 2024 PPA-MLP merger created a thrilling new landscape, but MLP must evolve to remain the top destination for talent. MLP needs to address issues head-on to ensure growth and maintain its reputation. Collin's influence is undeniable, and his voice carries immense weight. The sport's future is unfolding, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Out of the 88 players permanently signed to MLP teams, I'd bet that at least 70 of them absolutely love playing in the league. That's about 80%. And guess what? There are another 20 to 25 players who would jump at the chance to join an MLP team, giving it their all for a shot at glory. In fact, personally, I'd rather witness the roller coaster journey of a player like Blaine Hovenier over Collin Johns. Sure, he's newer to the sport, makes more mistakes, and doesn't always win. But he's a phenomenal team player, bringing great energy, encouragement, and stepping up when his temporary team needed him most. If Collin Johns is going to keep mailing it in and looking miserable in MLP, then don't make him play. Bring in other players who care and are hungry to be there. It's far worse for the sport to see one of the top 50 players in the world act like they don't want to be there, rather than watching a top 100-125 player give it everything they've got. Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis and thrilling updates on the ever-evolving world of pickleball.